Every morning, Micah Jameson walks into school hoping today will be different, but it never is. The rich kids laugh at her old shoes. Teachers look right through her. And the biggest bully in school? He follows her like a shadow, throwing words sharper than knives. But what no one knows, not even her best friend, is that Micah isn't just some quiet scholarship girl from the wrong side of town. At night, in a tiny garage with flickering lights and secondhand tools, she's building something no one's ever seen. And if it works, it could change everything, starting with the truth. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? This one's got more heart than you'd expect. Definitely worth sticking around for. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. The garage light flickered as it always did when the power surged. 15-year-old Micah Jameson didn't even look up, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the tiny circuit board. She'd grown used to the temperamental electricity in their modest two-bedroom home on the east side of town. "Hand me the micro-soldering iron, Pops," she asked, eyes still fixed on her work. Samuel Jameson, 73 years old with hands that still moved with the steadiness of the master electrician he once was, passed the tool to his granddaughter. "Mind your ground wire there," he said, pointing to a nearly invisible connection on the board. Micah nodded, making the adjustment. The relationship between them flowed like electricity itself, current passing back and forth, each amplifying the other's strengths. They'd been a team since Micah was 7, when her parents' car slid off an icy bridge and Samuel became her everything. "It's getting late," Samuel said, glancing at his watch. "School tomorrow." Micah sighed. "Just a few more minutes. I'm so close to getting this power consumption rate down." For 8 months, they'd been perfecting their energy optimization chip, a tiny device that could reduce power usage in smart home systems by nearly 75%. It had started as a simple science project idea, but had evolved into something much more ambitious. "The big companies have entire teams working on this problem," Samuel reminded her, but his voice carried pride, not doubt. "And my brilliant girl is doing it right here in our garage." Micah finally looked up, her dark eyes tired but determined. "The difference is theirs costs hundreds to manufacture. Ours will cost less than $20. She carefully placed the prototype into its protective case. Tomorrow was another day at Lincoln Heights Academy, where Micah was one of only 7 black students in her grade. The school sat in an affluent neighborhood, worlds away from their modest home, but offered a science program that Samuel had fought to get Micah into through a rare scholarship. "You've got everything for tomorrow?" Samuel asked as they cleaned up their workspace. "Yes, sir," Micah replied automatically, though her stomach tightened. Tomorrow meant facing the same hallways, the same stairs, the same whispers about her worn shoes and secondhand clothes. Morning came too quickly. Micah stood before her closet, fingering the limited options. She pulled on her cleanest jeans and a simple blue sweater that hid the fact it had been mended twice. At breakfast, Samuel slid a lunch bag across the table. "I put extra in there today," he said casually, though they both knew their pantry was getting sparse. His monthly pension check wouldn't arrive for another week. "Thanks, Pops," Micah said, forcing a smile. The city bus dropped her 2 blocks from Lincoln Heights. As Micah approached the imposing brick building, she did what she always did, took a deep breath and made herself as invisible as possible. It never quite worked. "Well, look who it is," came a voice from behind her. Blake Johnson, son of the city's most prominent real estate developer, fell into step beside her. "Micah from the hood. What's in the bag today?" "Government cheese." His friend snickered. Micah kept walking, eyes forward. She'd learned that engaging only made things worse. "Seriously, though," Blake continued, "those the same shoes from last year? They're practically talking to me." He made exaggerated mouth movements with his hands. Inside, Micah slipped into her first class and took her usual seat in the back corner. Her fingers found the small notebook in her pocket where she'd sketched the latest revisions to their chip design. This was her real world, the elegance of circuits, the logic of energy flow. Her sanctuary. "Don't forget about the Hunter Science Fair next month," Mrs. Abernathy announced to the class. "Registration closes Friday." Micah's heart quickened. The Hunter Science Fair wasn't just any competition. It was prestigious, with college recruiters and industry professionals in attendance. Winners received scholarships and, more importantly, recognition. As the bell rang, Micah approached Mrs. Abernathy's desk. "I'd like to register for the fair," she said quietly. "Wonderful." Mrs. Abernathy smiled warmly. "What's your project?" "An energy optimization microchip for smart home systems," Micah replied. Mrs. Abernathy's eyebrows rose. "That sounds ambitious. You might want to consider something more manageable. Perhaps a solar power demonstration." The familiar weight of being underestimated settled on Micah's shoulders. "I've been working on it for months," she explained. "With my grandfather." "Well, it's your choice," Mrs. Abernathy said, her smile tighter now. "Just don't be disappointed if the judges find it a bit beyond your level." Micah nodded, already turning away. In the hallway, she collided with Blake, her backpack slipping off her shoulder and spilling its contents. "Watch it, welfare girl," Blake snapped, deliberately stepping on her notebook as he passed. As Micah gathered her belongings, a hand appeared, helping collect scattered papers. Maya Chen, a quiet girl from her math class, offered a sympathetic smile. "Thanks," Micah whispered. "Your energy chip ideas sound amazing," Maya said. "I overheard you talking to Mrs. Abernathy." For a moment, Micah felt seen, actually seen for her mind, not her circumstances. "Thanks," she said again, this time with genuine warmth. That evening, as Micah and Samuel worked in their garage laboratory, she didn't mention the exchange with Blake or Mrs. Abernathy's doubts. Instead, she focused on what mattered, the tiny chip that might just change everything. "Look at this, Pops," she said, adjusting a microscopic connection. "If we reroute the power flow here, we can shave another 3% off the consumption rate." Samuel studied the design, his weathered face breaking into a proud smile. "You know what, Micah? I think we might actually pull this off." In the warm glow of the garage light, Micah allowed herself to believe it too. The fluorescent lights of the science lab buzzed overhead as Mr. Reynolds paced between lab tables, checking each student's work. Micah hunched over her notebook, carefully sketching the refined schematics for her chip. The science fair was 4 weeks away, and she needed Mr. Reynolds to approve her project proposal today. "That's excellent work, Blake," Mr. Reynolds said, stopping at the table in front of Micah. "Your solar car design shows real promise." Blake glanced back at Micah with a smirk. "Thanks, Mr. Reynolds. My dad's friend at MIT gave me some pointers." Mr. Reynolds nodded approvingly. Connections like that make all the difference. When he finally reached Micah's table, his enthusiasm visibly dimmed. "What do we have here, Miss Jameson?" Micah took a deep breath. "It's an energy optimization microchip for smart home systems," she explained, sliding her detailed proposal forward. "It reduces power consumption by redirecting energy flow, and this is what you're proposing for the Hunter Science Fair?" Mr. Reynolds interrupted, flipping quickly through her meticulously prepared pages. "Yes, sir. My grandfather and I have been developing it for months." Mr. Reynolds sighed. "Micah, I appreciate ambition, but this is the kind of project that requires advanced engineering knowledge and expensive equipment. We've built a working prototype," Micah insisted, her voice soft but determined. "In our garage." A few students snickered. Blake whispered loudly to his friend, "In her garage. Probably using tinfoil and rubber bands." Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Let's be realistic, Micah. Major tech companies spend millions on R&D for this kind of technology. Perhaps something more appropriate to your resources would be better." The familiar sting of dismissal burned in Micah's chest. "With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, I'd like to try." He handed back her proposal with a look that mixed pity with impatience. "Your choice. But you'll need parental consent and the registration fee by Friday." The registration fee. Micah had forgotten about the $75 fee. That was 3 days of groceries for her and Samuel. That afternoon, Blake blocked Micah's path as she headed to her locker. "Hey, garage scientist," he called out. "Reynolds was trying to save you from embarrassing yourself. Take the hint." "Leave me alone, Blake," Micah muttered, trying to step around him. Blake moved with her. "You know why they have that registration fee? To keep it serious. To keep out people who don't belong." My project is serious, Micah said, louder than she intended. Right? Blake laughed. The welfare girl who's going to revolutionize smart home technology. That's hilarious. His friends joined in the laughter, creating a circle around Micah that felt like it was closing in. From the corner of her eye, she saw Maya watching, her face conflicted. My lunch money was declined again yesterday, said Alicia, while Blake's satellites. Maybe Micah can build a chip to fix the cafeteria payment system next. She can't even afford new shoes, Blake said. How's she going to afford circuit boards? Micah clutched her backpack tighter, trying to hold on to her dignity. Some of us actually understand how electricity works instead of just consuming it, she said quietly, then pushed past them. Behind her, Blake called out, Good luck with your science fair project, Einstein. Maybe you can win enough money for a decent meal. On the bus ride home, Micah sat alone, Blake's words echoing in her head. Her phone buzzed with a text from Samuel. Big progress today. Think I solved the heat dissipation problem. Despite everything, Micah smiled. In their garage laboratory, she wasn't the welfare girl or the scholarship charity case. She was an engineer, a problem solver, a creator. That evening, as they worked together, Micah hesitated before mentioning the registration fee. $75? Samuel repeated, his forehead creasing with worry. That's steep. I know, Pops. I can skip it. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, watching Micah's fingers work deftly with components no bigger than grains of rice. No, he finally said. You're not skipping anything. I'll take care of it. But the heating bill is less important than this, Samuel said firmly. We've been working on this project for months. You deserve your shot. Later, Micah found him at the kitchen table, sorting through a small lockbox of keepsakes. He carefully removed his late wife's wedding ring, holding it gently before placing it in an envelope. Pops, no, Micah protested when she realized what he was doing. It's just a thing, Micah, Samuel said softly. Your grandmother would have wanted this. She always said your brain was going to take you places. The next morning, Samuel handed Micah an envelope containing the registration fee and signed consent form. You show them what you can do, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. At school, Micah submitted her paperwork to a surprised Mr. Reynolds. You're really going forward with this? He asked, counting the registration money. Yes, sir, Micah replied. And I'll have a working prototype for the fair. Mr. Reynolds shook his head slightly. Well, you've paid your fee. Good luck. As Micah left the classroom, she nearly collided with Blake again. You actually paid? He asked, seeming genuinely surprised. Where'd you get the money? Sell your grandpa's dentures. Something snapped inside Micah. No, but he did sell my grandmother's wedding ring, she said, the truth slipping out before she could stop it. For once, Blake had no quick comeback. A flicker of something, maybe even shame, crossed his face. Micah walked away, head high. That evening, she and Samuel made their biggest breakthrough yet. The prototype chip successfully regulated power to their test setup, cutting consumption by 72%. It works, Samuel breathed, staring at the readings in disbelief. Micah, it actually works. Micah looked at the tiny miracle they'd created together and thought of her grandmother's ring. It better, she whispered. It has to. The school cafeteria hummed with conversation as Micah sat alone at her usual corner table, picking at a sandwich while reviewing her notes. 3 weeks until the science fair, and every minute counted. Her prototype worked consistently in their home tests, but she needed to document everything perfectly. Is this seat taken? Micah looked up to find Maya standing there, lunch tray in hand. No, Micah replied, surprised. Maya sat down, glancing nervously toward a table where her usual friends were watching. I heard you're still doing the energy chip for the science fair. Yeah, Micah said cautiously. Conversations with other students usually came with a hidden trap. That's really cool, Maya said, lowering her voice. My dad works in tech, and he says energy efficiency is going to be huge in the next few years. Micah studied Maya's face for signs of mockery, but found none. Thanks. It's been challenging, but a shadow fell across their table. Blake loomed over them, his expression incredulous. Seriously, Maya? You're sitting with her now. Maya stiffened. We're just talking about science fair projects. Right, Blake said. The amazing garage invention. So tell us, Micah, how exactly do you build microchips without, a multi-million-dollar clean room? Micah caught Maya's slight wince. There are ways to work around industrial requirements for prototyping, she answered, keeping her voice level. It won't be production ready, but it demonstrates the concept. Concept, Blake repeated, dragging out the word. Sounds like a fancy way of saying it doesn't actually work. It works, Micah said firmly. Prove it, Blake challenged. Show us right now. I don't have it with me. Blake's smile turned triumphant. Convenient. Leave her alone, Blake, Maya said quietly. Or what? Blake shot back. You'll join the charity case club too? Maya's face flushed, and she looked down at her tray. Micah felt a familiar hollowness in her chest, the realization that even potential allies had their limits. I don't need to prove anything to you, Micah said, gathering her things. Save it for the science fair. As she walked away, she heard Blake's exaggerated whisper. $10 says she doesn't even show up. That afternoon in Mr. Reynolds' class, Micah tried to focus as he lectured about electrical resistance. This was a topic she understood intimately from her work with Samuel, but Mr. Reynolds' explanation lacked practical nuance. When he asked a question about optimizing circuit efficiency, Micah raised her hand. Mr. Reynolds' eyes swept the room, settled briefly on her, then moved on. Blake, your thoughts. Blake fumbled through an answer that missed key principles. Mr. Reynolds nodded encouragingly anyway. That's the right direction. Anyone else? Micah kept her hand up. After an uncomfortable pause, Mr. Reynolds sighed. Yes, Micah. In practical applications, you want to consider not just the resistance values, but also heat dissipation and power consumption patterns, she explained, drawing from her months of experimentation. Mr. Reynolds frowned slightly. That's more advanced than we're covering today. But it's relevant to real-world applications, Micah persisted. In our chip design, Micah, Mr. Reynolds cut her off. Please stick to the material we're covering. Not everyone has the privilege of garage engineering experiments. The class tittered. Micah felt her face grow hot as she sank back in her seat. After class, Mr. Reynolds asked her to stay behind. Micah, he began, his tone patronizing. I understand you're excited about your project, but I'm concerned you're setting yourself up for disappointment. My prototype works, Mr. Reynolds. He smiled thinly. Even if you built something that functions on a basic level, the Hunter Science Fair judges are looking for projects that demonstrate a genuine understanding of scientific principles, not just trial and error tinkering. The dismissal in his voice was unmistakable. Micah stood straighter. Our design is based on solid electrical engineering principles. The energy redirecting method we've developed. Mr. Reynolds interrupted. You and your grandfather, the electrician? Yes, Micah said firmly. He knows more about practical electrical applications than. She stopped herself before finishing the thought. Mr. Reynolds' expression hardened. Then a qualified science teacher with a master's degree? Is that what you were going to say? No, sir, Micah backtracked, realizing she'd overstepped. She couldn't afford to make an enemy of her teacher. I've been doing this a long time, Micah. I recognize ambition, but I also recognize when a student is out of their depth. His tone softened slightly. There's no shame in changing to a more suitable project. You still have time. Micah felt the weight of his doubt pressing down on her. I appreciate your concern, but I'm continuing with my project. That evening, as she and Samuel worked in the garage, Micah was quieter than usual. The prototype lay before them, working perfectly in their test setup. The tiny chip was directing energy flow with remarkable efficiency, exactly as they designed it to. What's troubling you? Samuel asked, recognizing her mood. Mr. Reynolds thinks our project is just tinkering. Not real science. Samuel's eyes narrowed. Does he now? He picked up the prototype carefully. This chip design incorporates principles of electrical engineering that professionals would recognize as innovative. Your algorithm for energy distribution is elegant. He doesn't think I understand the science behind it, Micah admitted. He thinks it's just luck or, I don't know, a fluke. Then he's the one who doesn't understand, Samuel said firmly. Sometimes the best innovations come from people who don't know what's impossible. They worked late into the night, perfecting the documentation and testing protocols. Around midnight, Samuel made a suggestion that changed everything. "We should file a provisional patent application," he said suddenly. Micah looked up in surprise. "A patent? Isn't that expensive?" "Provisional applications are cheaper, about $150, Samuel explained. "It would protect our design for a year while we figure out next steps." "But that's still a lot of money for us right now," Micah pointed out. Samuel smiled mysteriously. "I've been saving, just in case this worked out." 2 days later, they submitted the provisional patent application online. It felt surreal to Micah, seeing their names on an official document, their innovation described in precise technical language. "Now we wait," Samuel said, his voice proud. "And we get ready to show the world what the Jamesons can do." What neither of them could have predicted was how quickly everything would change, or how the science fair would become not just a school competition, but the turning point in both their lives. The weeks leading up to the science fair rushed by in a blur of late nights and circuit refinements. Micah and Samuel worked relentlessly, perfecting their prototype, testing it under various conditions, and preparing their presentation materials. Their little garage had transformed into a legitimate laboratory, with equipment salvaged from recycling centers and secondhand shops. At school, Micah kept her head down, avoiding Blake's taunts and Mr. Reynolds' skeptical glances. She noticed Maya watching her sometimes, a mix of curiosity and hesitation in her expression, but they rarely spoke. The divide between them, social status, courage, priorities, remained unbridged. 1 week before the fair, Micah stayed late after school to use the printer for her presentation boards. The hallways were nearly empty as she gathered her materials and headed toward the exit. Blake's voice stopped her cold. "Still working on your imaginary invention?" He emerged from a classroom, flanked by 2 friends. Micah clutched her presentation materials tighter. "It's not imaginary." "Let's see it then," Blake challenged, stepping closer. "At the science fair," Micah replied, trying to step around them. Blake blocked her path. "I've been reading up on microchips. Do you have any idea how complicated they are to manufacture? You need clean rooms, specialized equipment, millions in funding. We found workarounds," Micah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Our approach is different." "Different?" Blake scoffed. "You mean amateur?" He reached for her folder. "Let me see these amazing designs." Micah pulled back. "No, they're patent pending." Blake and his friends burst out laughing. "Patent pending? That's hilarious. You think you've invented something patentable in your garage?" "Leave me alone, Blake," Micah said, her patience wearing thin. Something in her tone must have angered him. Blake's expression hardened, and he grabbed at her folder more forcefully. "Come on, garage genius. Show us your big invention." In the struggle, the folder ripped open. Papers scattered across the hallway floor, including a printout of their provisional patent application with its official filing number clearly visible. Blake stared at it, momentarily shocked into silence. "You actually filed a patent application?" His voice held a new note, uncertainty, maybe even a flicker of respect. Micah knelt to gather her papers, heart pounding. Among them was a small plastic case containing their prototype chip. Before she could reach it, Blake's foot came down, deliberately crushing the case with a sickening crack. "Oops," he said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Micah stared in horror at the destroyed prototype. Months of work, Samuel's pension money, her grandmother's ring, all crushed under Blake's expensive sneaker. "You had no right," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes despite her best efforts to hold them back. For a moment, Blake seemed to realize he'd crossed a line. His friends shifted uncomfortably behind him. "It was probably just an empty case anyway," he said, but his voice sounded hollow. Micah carefully gathered the broken pieces into the crushed case. Without another word, she picked up her scattered papers and walked away, her back straight despite the disaster she carried in her hands. That evening, Samuel found her sitting at their workbench, staring at the damaged prototype. "What happened?" he asked softly. When Micah explained, Samuel's face darkened with anger, then softened with resolve. We still have our designs. We still have our components. We'll rebuild it. The science fair is in 6 days, Micah said, her voice hollow. Then we have 6 days, Samuel replied simply. We've done it once. We can do it again. They worked through the night, carefully extracting salvageable components from the crushed prototype. By morning, they had a plan to rebuild. It would mean skipping school, but there was no choice. Every hour counted. Samuel called the school. Micah has a family emergency, he explained. She'll be absent for a few days. For the next 3 days, they barely slept, working in marathon sessions to recreate their invention. Samuel's hands, normally so steady, occasionally trembled with fatigue, but he refused to stop. Micah lost track of time as they soldered, programmed, and tested. On the 4th day, as they were bent over the workbench, a knock came at their front door. Micah opened it to find Maya standing uncertainly on their porch. I brought your assignment, she said, holding out a folder. And I wanted to see if you're okay. Micah hesitated, then invited her in. Why are you doing this? Maya looked down. I saw what Blake did to your project. It was wrong. I should have said something then, but you didn't want to be next, Micah finished for her. Yeah, Maya admitted, clearly ashamed. She glanced around the modest house. Is this where you've been building your chip? Micah led her to the garage. Maya's eyes widened as she took in their makeshift laboratory. Organized chaos of tools, components, and diagrams covering every surface. You really are building it, she breathed. Samuel looked up from the circuit board he was working on. Hello there. Friend of Micah's. This is Maya, Micah explained. From school. Maya stepped closer to the workbench, studying the tiny components with genuine interest. My dad works at TechCore. He says energy efficiency is going to be the next big breakthrough area. Samuel smiled. Smart man, your father. What happened to your prototype? Maya asked. Blake stepped on it, Micah said simply. We're rebuilding. Maya's expression shifted from curiosity to determination. Can I help? My dad taught me basic soldering, and I'm good at following instructions. Micah exchanged a glance with Samuel, who nodded slightly. We could use another pair of hands, he admitted. For the next 2 days, Maya joined them after school. Her presence changed the dynamic, brought fresh energy and perspective. She was a quick learner, and her questions sometimes led to new insights. By the day before the science fair, they had a functioning prototype again. It wasn't as refined as the original, but their tests showed it working at 68% efficiency, still remarkable for what they were trying to achieve. I can't believe you've done this, Maya said as they ran their final test. This could really change things. If anyone takes us seriously, Micah replied, the weight of Mr. Reynolds' dismissal and Blake's mockery still heavy on her mind. They will, Maya said with newfound conviction. You just need the right audience. That night, after Maya left, Samuel placed a hand on Micah's shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said, I want you to know how proud I am. Not just of what we built, but of who you are. Micah leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but determined. Thanks for never giving up, Pops. Jamesons don't give up, he replied. We solve problems. As Micah fell into bed that night, her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. My dad's friend from TechCore is judging tomorrow. I told him to pay special attention to your project. For the first time in weeks, Micah fell asleep with hope outweighing her fear. The gymnasium buzzed with activity as students set up their science fair projects. Tables lined the large space, each assigned to a student with their display boards, prototypes, and nervous energy. Micah and Samuel arrived early, carefully transporting their rebuilt prototype and presentation materials. Their assigned table was in the far corner, not prime real estate, but Micah was beyond caring about placement. They had made it. Against all odds, they had a working prototype to present. Let me help with the setup, Samuel offered, his weathered hands steadier today than they had been in weeks. They methodically arranged their display, the main board explaining the concept, technical specifications, and test results, the prototype securely mounted on a demonstration platform, and a tablet showing real-time power consumption metrics. It looks professional, Samuel said, stepping back to observe their work. Micah nodded, a tightness in her chest. I just hope someone actually looks at it. As other students arrived, Micah noticed the stark contrast between their polished, commercially printed displays and her handmade presentation. Blake's table was front and center, his solar car gleaming under professional lighting. His father stood beside him, clasping the shoulder of Mr. Reynolds, who laughed at something Mr. Johnson said. Maya arrived with her biochemistry project, sitting up 2 tables away. She caught Micah's eye and gave an encouraging smile. At 9:30, Principal Davis addressed the gathered students, teachers, parents, and judges. Welcome to Lincoln Heights Academy's contribution to the Hunter Science Fair. Today, these young scientists will demonstrate the power of curiosity, innovation, and academic excellence. The judging began. Teams of evaluators moved from table to table, clipboard in hand, asking questions and taking notes. Micah watched anxiously as they made their way around the room in no apparent hurry to reach her corner. Blake's project drew a crowd, not just judges but local business people and parents. His father's network was visible in the attention his solar car received. Mr. Reynolds hovered nearby, proudly introducing Blake to the judges as one of our most promising students. 2 hours into the fair, no one had visited Micah's table except Maya, who stopped by to whisper, "My dad's friend is here, the one from TechCore. He's on the second judging panel." Micah nodded gratefully, trying to maintain her composure as time dragged on. Samuel squeezed her hand. "Patience," he murmured. "Our time will come." Finally, approaching midday, a judging team made their way toward Micah's corner. Mr. Reynolds was accompanying them, pointing out projects and making introductions. When he saw where they were headed, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Micah Jameson's project," he said as they approached. "As I mentioned earlier, this is a rather ambitious attempt." The judging team consisted of 3 people, an older woman with sharp eyes behind red-framed glasses, a middle-aged man Micah didn't recognize, and a younger Asian man who must be Maya's connection, Dr. Chen, according to his name badge from TechCore Innovations. "Tell us about your project," the woman prompted. Micah took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. "Our energy optimization microchip reduces power consumption in smart home systems by redirecting energy flow using a proprietary algorithm that anticipates usage patterns." She explained the technical specifications, demonstrating how the chip worked by connecting it to their test setup, a miniature smart home system they'd built to show real-time energy savings. Dr. Chin leaned in closer, his interest visibly piqued. "You're claiming a 68% reduction in power consumption?" "Yes, sir," Micah replied. "Our earlier prototype achieved 72%, but we had to rebuild after an accident," Mr. Reynolds interjected. "Micah and her grandfather built this in their garage, so naturally there are limitations to what's been accomplished." Dr. Chen ignored him, examining the prototype more carefully. "This architecture is fascinating. It's not like standard approaches." "We couldn't afford standard approaches," Samuel said simply. "So we invented our own." The woman judge raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Samuel Jameson, Micah's grandfather. Former electrician, current garage scientist." His tone carried quiet dignity. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should move on to the next project. I'm sure the judges have a full schedule." "Actually," Dr. Chin said, not looking up from the prototype, "I'd like to hear more about this algorithm." He pointed to a diagram on Micah's display board. "This isn't like anything I've seen in commercial applications." Micah explained their approach, gaining confidence as Dr. Chen asked increasingly technical questions that demonstrated he understood exactly what they'd accomplished. "You filed a provisional patent?" he asked, noticing the application number on their display. "Yes, sir," Micah confirmed. Last month, Mr. Reynolds could no longer contain himself. "Surely you don't think this garage experiment is actually patentable technology?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Dr. Chen straightened up, facing Mr. Reynolds directly. "Actually, this design approach is not only patentable, but potentially very valuable. The energy optimization market is projected to reach $48 billion by 2025. The other judges were now paying closer attention, scribbling notes on their clipboards. Samuel stood a little taller beside Micah, his expression a mixture of pride and vindication. "With all due respect," Mr. Reynolds persisted, "these are grandiose claims for a high school science project built in a garage without proper equipment or oversight." Just then, Micah's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down, then froze, staring at the screen. The email notification displayed just enough text for her to see what it was. Confirmation, patent licensing inquiry, NextSmart Technologies offers initial terms for. Dr. Chen noticed her expression. "Is everything all right?" With trembling fingers, Micah opened the email and quickly scanned its contents. NextSmart Technologies, one of the largest smart home system manufacturers in the country, was offering preliminary licensing terms for their patent-pending technology, starting at $5 per unit with a minimum commitment of 100,000 units per year. She handed the phone to Samuel, whose eyes widened as he read. "It's from NextSmart," he said, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. "They want to license our technology." "May I?" Dr. Chen asked, reaching for the phone. After reading the email, he let out a low whistle. "This is a serious offer from a major player." Mr. Reynolds snatched the phone, his face cycling through disbelief, shock, and finally a sickly attempt at a smile as he read. "Well," he said, handing the phone back, "this is unexpected." Across the gymnasium, a commotion had started. A woman with a press badge was interviewing Maya, who was pointing in Micah's direction. Several people, including Blake and his father, were looking their way with confused expressions. Dr. Chen turned to his fellow judges. "I think we've found our innovation category winner," he said simply. "And possibly the overall fair champion as well." The woman judge nodded, still writing rapidly on her clipboard. "Young lady, your project has just become the talk of this fair." Mr. Reynolds stood frozen, visibly processing the implications of what was happening. His prized student's expensive solar car project was being overshadowed by the very garage experiment he had dismissed for months. The reporter who had been interviewing Maya was now making her way toward Micah's table, camera operator in tow. "Is it true you've developed a revolutionary energy-saving technology?" she called out as she approached. Samuel placed a protective hand on Micah's shoulder. "My granddaughter can answer for herself," he said, voice full of quiet pride. Micah looked at the approaching reporter, at Dr. Chen's impressed expression, at Mr. Reynolds' stunned face, and finally at the tiny chip that had changed everything. She took a deep breath and stepped forward to tell her story. By Monday morning, Micah's world had turned upside down. The weekend had passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and reporters showing up at their modest home. The science journalist who had approached Micah at the fair, Zoe Washington from TechStream, had published a feature article that went viral overnight. "Garage Genius: How a 15-year-old black girl and her grandfather revolutionized smart home technology." The article detailed not just the technical achievement but the story behind it, the months of work in their garage, the financial sacrifices, the patent application filed with money from a sold wedding ring, and most explosively, the obstacles Micah had faced at school, including Mr. Reynolds' dismissal of her project and Blake's destruction of her original prototype. Somehow, Zoe had gotten hold of security camera footage showing Blake crushing Micah's prototype in the hallway. The grainy video was embedded in the article and had been shared thousands of times on social media, sparking outrage. "Are you sure you want to go to school today?" Samuel asked as Micah picked at her breakfast. "We could take another day to let things settle." Micah shook her head. "I can't hide forever." The bus ride to Lincoln Heights was nothing like her usual quiet journey. Other students kept glancing at her, whispering behind their hands. Some offered congratulations, others seemed resentful, but no one ignored her. As Micah approached the school entrance, she saw news vans parked along the street. Principal Davis stood at the door, intercepting reporters who tried to enter. "Micah," he called when he spotted her. "Please come to my office right away." In his office, Micah found an unexpected gathering. Superintendent Wilson, 2 school board members, and Mr. Johnson, Blake's father, whose face was a mask of controlled anger. "Micah," Principal Davis began, his tone unusually solicitous, "we want to congratulate you on your remarkable achievement at the science fair." "Thank you," Micah replied cautiously. "However," he continued, "we're concerned about certain allegations in Ms. Washington's article that reflect poorly on Lincoln Heights Academy." Mr. Johnson leaned forward. My son has been receiving death threats because of that video. It was clearly taken out of context. Superintendent Wilson raised a hand. Mr. Johnson, please. She turned to Micah. We're conducting a full investigation into both the incident with Blake and the concerns about Mr. Reynolds' conduct. In the meantime, Mr. Reynolds has been placed on administrative leave. Micah blinked in surprise. Administrative leave? The board takes allegations of educational bias very seriously, one of the board members explained, especially when they generate this level of public attention. I didn't ask for any of this, Micah said quietly. I just wanted to show my project. Nevertheless, Principal Davis said, we're dealing with a significant situation. The school has received hundreds of emails and calls since yesterday, most expressing outrage, the superintendent added, but also inquiries from technology companies, universities, and scholarship foundations interested in connecting with you. Mr. Johnson stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. My son made a mistake, yes, but he's being vilified online while she's being treated like some kind of hero. Your son deliberately destroyed months of my work, Micah replied, finding her voice. Work that my grandfather and I sacrificed everything for. He's 17, Mr. Johnson snapped. And now his future is at risk because of this media circus. Mr. Johnson, the superintendent said firmly, your son's actions have consequences. The school is handling this according to our disciplinary policies. Blake will face appropriate consequences for property destruction, but we're also concerned about his safety and well-being amid this public reaction. Principal Davis turned back to Micah. We've arranged for you to use a private study room today if you'd like to avoid the attention. And we've instructed teachers not to allow any discussion of the situation in their classrooms. Thank you, Micah said, though she wasn't sure if the arrangements were for her benefit or to contain the damage to the school's reputation. As she left the office, Micah found Maya waiting in the hallway. I'm so sorry, Maya blurted out. I didn't know Zoe would write all that about Blake and Mr. Reynolds. I just wanted someone to recognize your work. You talked to her. Before the fair, Maya nodded, looking miserable. My dad knows her. I told her about your project and about everything else. The bullying, Mr. Reynolds' attitude. I thought maybe if she covered your project, people would take it seriously. Micah was silent for a moment, processing this revelation. I'm not mad, she finally said. But things are complicated now. Throughout the day, Micah felt the weight of stares and whispers. Some students approached with congratulations or questions about her invention. Others, particularly Blake's friends, glared from a distance. Blake himself was nowhere to be seen. In the study room at lunch, Micah checked her phone to find dozens of new emails. NextSmart had increased their licensing offer. 3 universities had reached out about scholarship opportunities. A prestigious STEM program wanted her to apply for their summer institute. And there was a message from Zoe Washington. Sorry about the chaos. Your story needed to be told. All of it. When you're ready to talk next steps, call me. There are people who want to help you scale this technology. By the end of the school day, Micah just wanted to escape the stares and questions. As she headed for the bus, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal Mr. Johnson. Micah, he called. A word, please. She approached cautiously. Yes, Mr. Johnson? His expression was difficult to read, a mixture of anger, resignation, and calculation. This situation has gotten out of hand, he said. But perhaps we can find a resolution that benefits everyone. What do you mean? Blake made a poor choice. He's being suspended for it. But this online persecution is disproportionate to what happened. I didn't ask for the video to be published, Micah pointed out. Nevertheless, Mr. Johnson continued, your story has become quite valuable. The patent, the technology, the narrative of overcoming obstacles. It's a powerful package. Micah waited, unsure where this was heading. My company, Johnson Development, has a foundation that supports promising innovations, he said. We'd like to offer you a grant to develop your technology. Let's say $250,000 in exchange for certain considerations. What considerations? Micah asked, suddenly wary. Nothing unreasonable. joint press release announcing the grant, an agreement to refrain from further public discussion of unpleasantness with Blake, perhaps a public reconciliation statement. Micah stared at him, understanding dawning. You want to buy my silence. Mr. Johnson's smile tightened. I want to turn an unfortunate situation into a positive opportunity for everyone involved. The bus pulled up behind Mr. Johnson's car, its doors opening with a hydraulic hiss. Micah stepped back. I need to discuss any offers with my grandfather. And probably a lawyer. Of course, Mr. Johnson replied smoothly. Consider it carefully. Opportunities like this don't come along often for, he caught himself. For people like me, Micah finished for him. People from the East Side. People who build things in garages. Without waiting for his response, she turned and boarded the bus. At home, she found Samuel in the kitchen surrounded by papers, printouts of emails, the article, and what looked like financial calculations. How was school? He asked, studying her face. Overwhelming, Micah admitted, dropping her backpack on a chair. Mr. Reynolds is on administrative leave. Blake is suspended. And Mr. Johnson tried to buy my silence with a $250,000 grant. Samuel's eyebrows shot up. That's quite a day. He pushed a stack of papers toward her. While you were navigating that storm, I've been reviewing these licensing offers. Micah, do you understand what's happening? She shook her head, suddenly tired. Not really. Everything's moving too fast. Our chip could be in half the smart homes in America within 2 years, Samuel said, his voice gentle but serious. Even at the lowest licensing rate we've been offered, that's millions in royalties. Millions. Micah echoed, the word feeling strange in her mouth. Samuel nodded. This isn't just about a science fair anymore. We've created something valuable, something that could change how people use energy. He paused. And it's changing our lives too. Micah sank into a chair, the reality of their situation finally hitting her. What do we do now? First, Samuel said, we get a good lawyer. Then we make careful decisions, not based on revenge or fear or pressure, but based on what's right for us and for this technology. Micah nodded, thinking about Mr. Johnson's offer, about Blake's suspension, about the reporters outside their house. Everything's different now. Yes, Samuel agreed. But some things don't change. We're still Jamesons. We still solve problems. He smiled. We just have different problems to solve now. That night, as Micah lay in bed, her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. The whole school's talking about you. Blake's dad is furious. Are you okay? Micah stared at the message for a long time before replying, still figuring things out. But I think I will be. Sleep came slowly as she pondered the strange new reality she'd woken up to. One where her ideas had value, where her voice was suddenly being heard, and where the path forward was both terrifying and filled with possibility. Micah stood at the edge of their front yard, watching as workers installed a security system, a necessary precaution after the third journalist had been caught peering through their windows. 2 weeks had passed since the science fair, and their lives had transformed in ways neither she nor Samuel could have imagined. Their kitchen table had become command central, covered with contracts, legal documents, and business proposals. Samuel had hired Ms. Ortiz, a sharp-eyed intellectual property attorney who spoke with brutal honesty about their options. The next smart deal is solid, Ms. Ortiz explained during their latest meeting. $5 per unit with escalating royalties based on market penetration. With their distribution network, your technology could be in millions of homes within 3 years. Samuel nodded, carefully reviewing the paperwork. And our patent protection? The provisional gives you a year, but we're filing the full patent immediately. My technical team says your innovation is genuinely novel. The approach to energy redistribution isn't like anything currently on the market. Micah listened quietly, still adjusting to this new reality where adults in expensive suits asked for her opinion and called her Ms. Jameson with genuine respect. What about the other offers? Samuel asked. The buyout proposals. Ms. Ortiz shook her head. They're trying to capitalize on the publicity while lowballing the technology's value. Johnson Development's offer is particularly problematic. Micah had shared Mr. Johnson's grant proposal with their lawyer, who had been furious at the implicit attempt to silence a minor without proper representation. I recommend the licensing path, Ms. Ortiz continued. It gives you ongoing income, maintains your control of the technology, and positions you for future innovations. Later that afternoon, Micah sat on their porch swing, watching the neighborhood kids ride bikes in the street, something she'd done herself not so long ago, before circuits and algorithms had consumed her attention. Samuel joined her, easing his tired body onto the swing. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. Micah smiled faintly. "They're worth a lot more than that these days, apparently." Samuel chuckled. "Indeed they are. I keep thinking about school," Micah admitted. "It's been strange being away for 2 weeks. After the media frenzy had escalated, Principal Davis had approved Micah's temporary absence, arranging for her assignments to be sent home. The school's attempt to manage the situation had further fueled public interest. Multiple news outlets had run stories about educational bias and missed innovation in underfunded communities. "Are you ready to go back?" Samuel asked gently. Micah shrugged. "I don't know. Everything's different now." "I'm different." She paused. "And I've been thinking about something else too." "What's that?" "All these royalties coming in. It's more money than we ever imagined having." Samuel nodded. "Life-changing money. I want to do something meaningful with it," Micah said. "Something beyond just buying stuff for ourselves." Samuel's eyes crinkled with pride. "What do you have in mind?" "A program. For kids like me, who have ideas but no resources. Free STEM tutoring, equipment, mentorship." The concept had been forming in her mind for days. "We could start right here in our neighborhood." "That's a fine idea," Samuel said warmly. "More than fine, it's important." The next morning, Micah decided it was time to return to Lincoln Heights. She couldn't hide forever, and there were practical matters to address, like picking up her science fair trophy, which she hadn't been present to receive at the award ceremony. The school seemed different somehow, smaller, less intimidating. Principal Davis intercepted her in the hallway, his manner noticeably deferential. "Micah, welcome back. How are you settling into your new circumstances?" "Still adjusting," she replied honestly. "Well, we're very proud of what you've accomplished," he said. "In fact, the board is discussing ways to recognize your achievement more formally, perhaps naming the science lab after you." The suggestion was so absurd, naming a facility after a current student, that Micah nearly laughed. "That's really not necessary." Of course. But we want you to know that Lincoln Heights is proud to have played a role in your journey." Micah thought about the months of dismissal, the lack of support, the active discouragement. "A role," she repeated neutrally. As she made her way to her locker, students stopped to stare or offer congratulations. Maya appeared, looking nervous. "You're back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I wasn't sure if you'd ever come back. Just picking up some things," Micah explained. "How's it been here?" "Weird," Maya admitted. "Mr. Reynolds is still on leave. They brought in a substitute who's actually really good. She has a background in engineering." She hesitated. "Blake came back yesterday. How's that going?" "He's different. Quieter. Some of his friends are still angry at you, but Blake himself hasn't said much. His suspension was only 5 days, but he stayed away longer." As if summoned by his name, Blake appeared at the end of the hallway. He froze when he saw Micah, his face flushing. For a moment, she thought he might turn and walk away. Instead, he approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Micah," he said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "Can we talk? Somewhere private." She glanced at Maya, who looked as surprised as she felt. "Okay." "The study room." Blake nodded, and the three of them walked in uncomfortable silence to the small room off the library. Once inside, Blake shut the door and took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," he said, the words coming out stiffly but seemingly sincere. "What I did to your project was inexcusable. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you in the worst way." Micah studied his face, looking for signs of his father's influence. Was this a calculated move to help repair the Johnson family image? "I'm sorry too," Blake continued when she didn't respond. "For all of it." The comments about your clothes, your lunch, calling you welfare girl. It was cruel and stupid. Why are you apologizing now? Micah asked directly. Because I turned out to be worth millions. Or because you actually regret your behavior? Blake flinched. I deserve that. But it's not about the money. Not entirely. When that video went viral, I had to face what I'd done in a way I couldn't ignore. My own friends were disgusted with me. He looked down at his hands. My dad wanted me to offer you some kind of deal, money for a public statement saying we'd resolved everything. But that felt wrong. This isn't something I can buy my way out of. Micah was silent for a long moment, processing his words. Finally, she said, You really hurt me, Blake. Not just the prototype, which we managed to rebuild, but the constant reminders that I didn't belong here, that I wasn't worth basic respect. I know, he said quietly, and I can't undo that. Maya, who had been watching this exchange with wide eyes, spoke up. Micah's starting a STEM program for kids who don't have resources. Maybe you could help with that, Blake. Blake looked up, surprised. You would let me be involved? After everything, Micah considered the possibility. Part of her wanted nothing to do with Blake, wanted to hold on to the righteous anger that had fueled her through the hardest days. But another part recognized something important in this moment, the potential for real change, not just in her circumstances, but in the very dynamics that had made her life difficult. I don't know yet, she said honestly, but I believe in second chances. I'll think about it. Later that day, Micah met with Principal Davis and Superintendent Wilson to discuss her return to school. To her surprise, they were receptive when she brought up her idea for a STEM program. We could provide space at Lincoln Heights, Principal Davis offered eagerly. It would be an excellent opportunity for the school to demonstrate its commitment to innovation and inclusivity. The program wouldn't be just for Lincoln Heights students, Micah clarified. It needs to reach kids from all over the district, especially from schools with fewer resources. Superintendent Wilson nodded thoughtfully. That aligns with our equity initiatives. Would you consider developing this as a district-wide program? We could provide administrative support, facilities usage. I need control over the curriculum and approach, Micah said, finding confidence in her vision. And it would need to be truly accessible. No fees, no complex application process, no barriers to entry. By the time Micah returned home that afternoon, the outlines of the program were taking shape. Samuel listened as she explained the district's offer. Sounds like they're eager to associate themselves with your success, he observed wryly. Probably, Micah agreed. But their resources could help reach more kids. Samuel studied his granddaughter with pride. You're thinking bigger than revenge. That's wisdom. I learned it from you, Micah said simply. That evening, they signed the licensing agreement with Nexmar Technologies. As Ms. Ortiz had predicted, their chip design would be incorporated into the company's next generation of smart home systems, with production scheduled to begin within 6 months. Congratulations, Ms. Ortiz said as Samuel's weathered hand completed the final signature. You're officially technology entrepreneurs. After she left, Micah and Samuel sat at their kitchen table, looking at the signed documents that would forever change their financial future. What should we call the STEM program? Samuel asked. Micah thought for a moment, then smiled. How about Garage Innovators? For all the kids with big ideas and nowhere to build them. Samuel's eyes crinkled. Perfect. From our garage to the world. As Micah climbed into bed that night, she reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past months. From the quiet girl, hiding her brilliance, to a young entrepreneur with the power to create change. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but for perhaps the first time in her life, it was open with possibility rather than blocked by obstacles. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Blake asked me if you were serious about considering him for the program. Are you? Micah typed back, still thinking. But everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were yesterday. She set her phone aside and closed her eyes, dreaming not of revenge or vindication, but of garages all across the city lighting up with the sparks of young minds building impossible things. 6 months later, the former community center on the east side of town hummed with activity. What had once been an underused building with leaking ceilings and outdated facilities had been transformed into the headquarters of Garage Innovators. Micah's vision brought to life. Micah stood in the doorway of the main workspace, watching his 20 students bend over circuit boards, robotics components, and computer screens. Volunteer mentors moved among them, offering guidance and encouragement. The space was designed to be welcoming but practical. Workbenches instead of desks, tools instead of textbooks, and problems to solve rather than tests to pass. Ms. Jameson, a small voice pulled her attention downward. 10-year-old Darius looked up at her, holding a partially assembled solar panel. I think I got the connections backward. Micah knelt to his level. Let's take a look together, she said, guiding him back to his workstation. As she helped Darius troubleshoot his project, Micah caught sight of Samuel across the room, surrounded by a group of teenagers as he demonstrated proper soldering technique. His health had improved in recent months. No more skipping meals to make ends meet, no more choosing between medication and electricity. The royalties from their chip had provided financial security neither of them had ever known. The next Smart Age 12 thermostat had hit the market 2 months earlier, featuring Jameson energy optimization technology prominently in its marketing. Already, it was outperforming competitors in energy efficiency tests, and orders were exceeding projections. 3 other manufacturers had approached them about licensing the technology for different applications. Micah called Maya from the computer lab. The new 3D printer is acting up again. With a smile at Darius, who was now confidently reconnecting his solar panel, Micah moved to the next challenge. Maya had become not just a friend but an essential part of Garage Innovators, bringing organizational skills and enthusiasm that complemented Micah's technical focus. The program had launched with an initial cohort of 30 students from across the district, selected not based on grades or test scores but on interest and need. Some came from affluent families but lacked creative opportunities in traditional classrooms. Others, like Darius, came from circumstances similar to Micah's, bright minds constrained by limited resources. What had surprised many, including Micah herself, was Blake's involvement. After several conversations, some uncomfortable and others unexpectedly productive, she had allowed him to volunteer with the program. His initial awkwardness had gradually given way to genuine engagement, particularly with the younger participants who knew nothing of his history with Micah. As if thinking of him had conjured his presence, Blake appeared at the door to the electronics lab, carrying a box of new components. The shipment from TechCore arrived, he announced, setting down the box. Dr. Chen sent extra microcontrollers and said a call if we need anything else. Thanks, Micah replied. Their interactions remained somewhat formal, but the tension had eased over time. Working toward a common purpose had a way of reshaping relationships. Later that afternoon, as the day's session wound down, Micah gathered the students for their weekly reflection circle. Seated on the floor in a large circle, each participant shared their progress, challenges, and discoveries. I figured out why my code wasn't working, shared 14-year-old Zoe, beaming with pride. It wasn't a mistake. I was just thinking about the problem wrong. That's often how breakthroughs happen, Micah responded. The obstacle becomes the way forward. After the students departed, some picked up by parents, others catching the special bus route the district had arranged. Micah, Samuel, Maya, and Blake gathered in the small office to review the day. The Hunter Science Fair is in 3 weeks, Maya reminded them, consulting her tablet. We have 12 students who want to enter projects, including Darius with his solar-powered water purifier, Samuel added proudly. That boy reminds me of you, Micah. Blake cleared his throat. I've been thinking about the fair. It might be awkward with everything that happened last year. Micah considered this. The annual Hunter Science Fair was where their journey had begun, where dismissal had turned to vindication, where a crushed prototype had led to an unexpected future. It won't be awkward, she decided. It'll be an opportunity to show how much has changed. 2 days before the science fair, Micah received an unexpected email from Mr. Reynolds. After his administrative leave, he had taken early retirement rather than return to Lincoln Heights. His message was brief but direct. Miss Jameson, I owe you an apology. My failure to recognize your potential and support your work was inexcusable. The success of your innovation and your Garage Innovators program has forced me to confront biases I didn't want to acknowledge. If you're open to it, I'd like to offer my services as a volunteer with your program. Sometimes old dogs can learn new tricks. Respectfully, Edward Reynolds. Micah showed the email to Samuel, who raised his eyebrows. That's quite a turnaround. People can change, Micah said, thinking of Blake's transformation. If they want to, what will you tell him? That we'll consider it. That everyone deserves a second chance to be better. The day of the science fair arrived sunny and cool. The Lincoln Heights Gymnasium looked much as it had a year earlier, but Micah's perspective had shifted entirely. This time she arrived not as a participant, but as a mentor, accompanying the Garage Innovators students as they set up their projects. Principal Davis approached as Micah helped Darius arrange his display. Ms. Jameson, he greeted her with a deference that still felt strange. We're honored to have your program participating today. These kids have worked hard, Micah replied. They deserve the opportunity to show what they can do. As judges and visitors began to circulate, Micah noticed Blake standing awkwardly near the entrance, a toolkit in his hands. He had been helping students prepare for weeks, but seemed unsure of his place at the actual event. Making a decision, Micah walked over to him. The solar car team could use some help with their final adjustments, she said, gesturing toward a group of middle schoolers huddled around her project. Blake looked at her with surprise, then nodded. Thanks for letting me be here, he said quietly. After what happened last year, I wouldn't have blamed you for keeping me away. The past is a place of reference, not residence, Micah replied, quoting one of Samuel's favorite sayings. She handed him the toolkit he'd been holding uncertainly. Go help them make something amazing. As Blake moved toward the waiting students, Dr. Chen appeared at Micah's side. Your grandfather told me I'd find you here, he said. I have news you might find interesting. He explained that TechCore was establishing a new innovation center focused on energy efficiency technologies, with a special fellowship program for young engineers from underrepresented backgrounds. We'd like you to be on the advisory board, he concluded. Your perspective would be invaluable. As they discussed the details, Micah watched her students engage with judges and visitors. Their faces shone with the special light that comes from being truly seen and heard. Even those who had struggled academically in traditional classrooms were articulating complex concepts with confidence, their hands gesturing enthusiastically as they explained their work. Near the solar car display, Blake knelt beside a nervous 12-year-old, discreetly guiding her through a minor repair without taking over or diminishing her ownership of the project. The girl's anxiety visibly melted away as the fix succeeded, replaced by determination as she turned to face the approaching judges. Samuel joined Micah as Dr. Chen departed. Look at what you've built, he said, gesturing not at any physical project but at the human connections forming throughout the room. What we've built, Micah corrected him. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Pops. Samuel's weathered hand found hers. Your parents would be so proud of the woman you're becoming. The memory of her parents, faded now after 8 years, warmed Micah's heart. I think they would be proud of both of us. As the judging concluded and awards were announced, Garage Innovators students received recognition in multiple categories. Darius won first place in the Environmental Solutions Division, his face a picture of astonished joy as he accepted his trophy. When the ceremony ended and students began dispersing with their families, Blake approached Micah one last time. I wanted to say something, he began, shifting uncomfortably. My dad still doesn't get it. He thinks I'm wasting my time with the program, that I should focus on rebuilding my image through sports or student government. Micah waited, sensing there was more. But I'm not doing this for my image, Blake continued. For the first time, I feel like I'm doing something that actually matters. These kids look at me like I have something to offer beyond my father's name or my family's money. He paused. So, thank you. For the second chance. You earned it, Micah replied simply. Keep earning it. As they parted ways, Micah found Maya waiting by the exit with Samuel. Ready to go? Maya asked. The middle school group wants to celebrate at Delaney's ice cream. Samuel chuckled. Any excuse for ice cream. Outside, the spring sunshine illuminated a world of possibility. In 1 year, Micah had journeyed from a girl hiding her talents to a young woman embracing her power to change not just her own circumstances but the opportunities available to others. The garage where it all began was still there, still their workshop, and still the place where Samuel and Micah pursued new ideas. But now it was just one of many spaces where innovation happened, where minds were nurtured regardless of their starting point. As they walked toward the parking lot, surrounded by chattering students clutching project boards and trophies, Micah felt a profound sense of rightness. The chip that had changed their lives was now in use in thousands of homes across the country, saving energy and reducing bills. But the true power of their invention wasn't in the technology itself, it was in what it had enabled. A world where a girl from the East Side could transform dismissal into opportunity, where being underestimated became fuel for achievement, where the garage could be a launching pad for dreams too big to be contained. Samuel squeezed her hand, his eyes crinkling with joy and pride. No words were needed between them. They had built this new reality together, circuit by circuit, problem by solution, day by day. And as Darius ran ahead, trophy clutched to his chest, already talking about his next invention, Micah knew that the most important thing they had created wasn't an energy optimization chip. It was hope. Practical, hands-on, buildable hope. The kind that could power the future, one garage at a time. This story reminds us that greatness can come from anywhere. A garage, a quiet voice, even a broken heart. The people who doubt you might be loud, but your purpose is louder. So if you're ever feeling small, remember this. Your ideas, your voice, your spark, they matter. And when you stand tall in what you believe, no one can shrink you. Keep building. Keep dreaming. The world needs what only you can create. That wraps the story up. Do you think Micah should have given Blake that second chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love reading them. Thanks for listening. And if this inspired you, share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe and click for another powerful story.